Never quit. Keep going. There is a moment, and every single person watching this has felt it, where everything inside you says stop. Your body says stop. Your mind says stop. Your emotions say stop. The project isn't working. The relationship is falling apart. The dream feels further away than the day you started. You've given everything you have, and it feels like nothing came back. And in that moment, the easiest thing in the world, the most available, the most comfortable, the most understandable option is to quit, to walk away, to tell yourself it wasn't meant to be, to say you tried. But the Stoics had something to say about that moment. They had something to say about that exact second when your hands go weak and your spirit starts to fold. And what they said changed the way men and women have lived for over 2,000 years. Welcome to Stoicism Legends. If this is your first time here, we are glad you found us. Hit that subscribe button right now, because every single week, we go deep into the ancient wisdom that transforms ordinary people into legends. Real, practical, life-changing philosophy. No fluff, no filler. Just truth. And today, we are talking about the most powerful thing a human being can do. We are talking about what it means to never quit. We are talking about what it means to keep going when everything says stop. Chapter 1. The Weight of Continuing. Let's start with a name you need to know. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man on earth in his time, ruler of millions, commander of armies, a man who had every luxury, every comfort, every reason to rest. And yet, if you open his private journals, the collection we now call Meditations, the very first thing you notice is this. He was struggling, not from poverty, not from obscurity, from the weight of continuing. He wrote to himself, because remember, he never intended these words to be published. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wasn't writing that for you. He wasn't writing it for history. He was writing it because he needed to hear it himself. Because even Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man alive, woke up on mornings where he did not want to continue. And that is the first lesson I want you to receive today. The desire to quit is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that you are alive. Every person who has ever built something real, accomplished something meaningful, loved someone deeply, every single one of them has sat in the dark and wondered if it was worth it. The question is never will you feel like quitting. The question is what will you do when you do. Marcus understood something that took him years to articulate, and that most people never learn at all. Continuing is not natural. Continuing is a choice. Nature, in fact, moves toward ease. Water flows downhill. Fire burns outward. The body moves toward comfort and rest. To keep going, to push forward against resistance, against pain, against doubt, that is one of the few things in the universe that is uniquely human. It is the thing that separates those who live legendary lives from those who simply exist. And it begins not with willpower, not with motivation, not with a perfect strategy or the right circumstances. It begins with a decision. A quiet, unspectacular, completely unglamorous decision that you will not stop. Chapter 2. What quitting actually costs. We talk a lot about the pain of continuing, but we almost never talk about the cost of stopping. And I want you to sit with this because I believe this is one of the most important things you will hear today. Every time you quit, every time you abandon something meaningful before it is complete, you do not simply lose the thing you were pursuing. You lose a piece of your belief in yourself. This is something the Stoics understood deeply, and it is something that modern psychology has confirmed over and over again. We do not build confidence from success. We build it from follow-through. Think about that. Think about the person you know who seems unshakable, who walks into a room and carries a quiet certainty that most people can only dream of. They are not unshakable because they have never failed. They are unshakable because they have a history with themselves of not giving up. Every time they said they would do something, they did it. Every time they committed to something hard, they saw it through. Even when it hurt. Even when it took longer than expected. Even when nobody was watching and nobody would have known the difference. They built trust with themselves. And the opposite is equally true. Every time we quit, especially when we know we could have continued, we make a small withdrawal from that account of self-belief. Over time, those withdrawals accumulate. And one day we find ourselves in a new situation, facing a new challenge. And before we've even tried, a voice in the back of our mind says, "You won't finish this either." That voice is not cruel. It is not your enemy. It is simply an honest reporter of your past behavior. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who was, extraordinarily, a slave before he became one of the most revered philosophers in history, said this: "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. First decide who you are. First commit to the identity. And then, no matter what comes, do what that identity demands." This is not motivational language. This is structural. This is engineering. Because once you have decided who you are, not what you want, but who you are, quitting becomes inconsistent with your identity. And humans will do almost anything to remain consistent with how they see themselves. The question then is not, how do I stay motivated enough to keep going? The question is, who am I? And once you answer that, really answer it, in the quiet of your own chest, the behavior that follows becomes almost automatic. Chapter 3. The Philosophy of the Long Game. One of the things that kills more dreams than failure ever will is this. We expect results on a timeline that the universe has no obligation to honor. We start the business and expect profit in 6 months. We begin the fitness journey and expect transformation in 90 days. We start the creative work and expect recognition in a year. And when that timeline isn't met, when the results don't appear on the schedule we invented in our heads, we call it failure. We call it a sign that it isn't working. But the Stoics had a word for this kind of thinking. They called it impatience dressed as discernment. You convince yourself that you're making a rational evaluation, that the evidence suggests this isn't working, when in reality, you're just tired, and you want permission to stop. The ancient Stoic Seneca, one of the wealthiest and most influential men in Rome, a playwright, a philosopher, and a statesman, wrote in his letters, "It is not that I am brave, it is that I know what is worth fearing. And time wasted, that I fear." Seneca was obsessed with time, not in the anxious way, in the reverent way. He understood that every moment spent building something real was an investment that would compound, even if the returns were not yet visible. A tree planted today does not give fruit tomorrow, but the person who plants it and tends it faithfully will have an orchard when others are still deciding which seed to buy. This is the philosophy of the long game. And the long game requires something that our culture has systematically destroyed in us: tolerance for the invisible phase. Every great thing has an invisible phase. A phase where all the work is happening underground, where roots are forming, where foundations are being laid, where nothing looks different from the outside. In the startup world, they call it the valley of death. In fitness, they call it the plateau. In relationships, they call it the hard season. It has many names, but the experience is always the same. You are working. You are committed. You are doing everything right. And nothing seems to be changing. Most people quit here. And the tragedy, the devastating, heartbreaking tragedy, is that this invisible phase is almost always right before the breakthrough. The compound interest of effort doesn't pay in smooth, steady increments. It pays in sudden, dramatic jumps, after long, seemingly unrewarding periods of consistent investment. The people who win are not the people with the most talent. They are not the people with the most resources. They are the people who did not quit during the invisible phase. They are the people who trusted the process even when the process showed no visible results. They are the people who kept going when every rational voice in their head said this isn't working. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present, not the results, not the recognition, not the finish line. The present action, the present step, the present moment of choosing to continue. That is where your power lives. That is where legends are made." Chapter 4. The Stoics' Relationship with Pain. Here is something the Stoics understood that almost nobody talks about anymore. Pain is not the enemy of progress. Pain is the medium of progress. You do not grow through comfort. You grow through resistance. The muscle that is never challenged never strengthens. The mind that is never tested never deepens. The character that is never pressured never reveals itself. The Stoics were not masochists. They didn't celebrate suffering for its own sake. But they understood something fundamental about the nature of development. Everything that is forged, every blade, every beam, every beautiful thing that is built to last, is forged through heat and pressure. And you are no different. Epictetus, who was beaten, enslaved, and humiliated, who owned nothing, controlled nothing except his own mind, said this: "Seek not the good in external things. Seek it in yourself." He was not talking about self-absorption. He was not talking about ignoring the world. He was talking about this. The suffering that is happening to you right now, the difficulty, the setback, the pain, none of it determines your value. None of it determines your future. The only thing that determines your future is what you choose to do with it. And here is what I want you to hear, and I want you to hear it deeply. The people who have suffered the most have, in many cases, become the most capable. Not because suffering is magic. Not because pain automatically produces wisdom. But because those who choose to use their pain, to examine it, to learn from it, to let it build rather than destroy them, those people develop a kind of depth that cannot be manufactured any other way. They understand things that cannot be taught in a classroom. They carry a resilience that cannot be given, only earned. They look at new challenges with a calm that unnerves others, because they have been through fires that most people have never seen. Your pain is not wasted. Your struggle is not meaningless. It is the curriculum for the person you are becoming. And every day you choose to keep going, every day you refuse to let the difficulty define you, you are completing another lesson in that curriculum. Chapter 5. The Danger of Comparison. There is a particular kind of quitting that we rarely name, but that kills more potential than almost anything else. Quitting because someone else appears further ahead. You start your journey. You do the work. You commit. And then you look left. And you look right. And you see someone who seems to be ahead of you. Someone who got the result faster. Someone who has what you're working toward. And they got it easier, with less struggle at a younger age, with more help in less time. And something inside you cracks. Not because you failed, but because the comparison makes you feel like you failed. The Stoics called this the trap of externals. Marcus Aurelius wrote about it repeatedly, about the man who measures himself by what others possess, what others achieve, what others think of him. He called this a form of voluntary enslavement. Because the moment you allow another person's progress to define the meaning of your own journey, you have handed your peace, your motivation, and your sense of self to someone who has no idea they are carrying it. Here is the truth that comparison hides from you. You do not know what that person paid. You see their result. You do not see their cost. You see the highlight. You do not see the breakdown in the car, the relationship they sacrificed, the health they compromised, the years they spent in their own invisible phase when no one was watching and nothing was working. And here is the deeper truth. Even if they did get it easier than you, even if by every measure their path was smoother, it does not change the value of your path. Your journey is not a race against anyone else's journey. Your life is not a competition with your neighbor's life. The finish line is not get there before someone else. The finish line is become who you were capable of becoming. And that journey belongs to you alone. Seneca wrote, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live. Not learning how to win against others. Not learning how to outpace others. Learning how to live, fully, deeply, with integrity, with purpose, with the quiet pride of a person who kept going when quitting was easier." Chapter 6. Building the Habit of Not Quitting. Now I want to get practical with you. Because philosophy without practice is just entertainment. The Stoics were practitioners first. They didn't read philosophy. They lived it. And they gave us very specific tools, mental practices, daily disciplines, ways of thinking, that we can use right now to build the capacity to keep going. Here is the first one. The evening review. Every night, before you sleep, Marcus Aurelius would review his day. not to celebrate successes, not to punish failures, but to examine. Where did I act in alignment with my values? Where did I fall short? What will I do differently tomorrow? This practice, this honest, non-judgmental nightly inventory, builds something extraordinarily powerful over time. It builds the habit of witnessing yourself. Most people who quit don't quit in a single dramatic moment. They quit slowly, through a series of small unexamined compromises. A missed session here, a skipped commitment there, a habit slowly eroded until it disappears. The evening review catches these micro-surrenders before they become full retreat. The second tool, negative visualization. This one surprises people, because it sounds pessimistic, but it is the opposite. Every morning, or before any important undertaking, spend a few minutes imagining the obstacles you might face. Not to frighten yourself, but to prepare yourself. The Stoics practiced this under the Latin phrase premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. If you know the road is rough before you travel it, you pack the right shoes. You are not surprised by the difficulty. You are ready for it. And when the difficulty comes, and it will come, you don't experience it as a sign to stop. You experience it as the thing you already knew was part of the journey. The third tool, the dichotomy of control. This is perhaps the most fundamental of all Stoic practices. Every morning, before you do anything else, separate your day into two categories: what you control and what you don't. You control your effort, your attitude, your choices, your thoughts, your response to what happens. You do not control outcomes, timing, other people, the economy, the weather, the algorithm. Here is what this does to quitting. Most quitting is not really about inability. It is about frustration with things outside our control. The business didn't grow fast enough, but you can't control market timing. The relationship didn't heal, but you can't control another person's choices. The work didn't get recognized, but you can't control other people's attention. When you are clear about what you can and cannot control, when you are honest with yourself about which category your frustration belongs to, you find that your job is always the same. Control what you can control. Release everything else. And keep going. Chapter 7. The people who kept going. I want to tell you about a few people. Real people. People whose names history remembers. Not because they were the most talented, not because they had the best circumstances, but because they kept going when every reasonable person would have stopped. Frederick Douglass. Born into slavery. Beaten. Separated from his family. Given no education, no rights, no legal standing as a human being. Escaped with nothing. Arrived in a city where he knew almost no one. And built himself, through relentless self-education, through extraordinary courage, through a refusal to accept the definition others had placed on him, into one of the most powerful voices in American history. He did not have good circumstances. He had an unbreakable decision to keep going. Thomas Edison failed, by his own admission, over 10,000 times before he created a working light bulb. 10,000. When asked about this, he didn't speak of failure. He said he had found 10,000 ways that didn't work. He reframed every setback not as a reason to stop, but as data, as progress, as the invisible phase doing its work. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps, who lost his wife, his family, nearly everything, and who came out of that horror with something that has helped millions of people since. The understanding that the last human freedom, the one no external force can take, is the freedom to choose your response to what happens to you. He wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." These people had one thing in common. Not talent, not luck, not perfect timing. They had the stubborn, unshakable, almost irrational commitment to keep going. And history remembers them because of it. Your circumstances may not be as extreme as these, but your commitment can be equally profound. Chapter 8. The identity of someone who never quits. I want to come back to something I said earlier because I want to go deeper on it. The Stoics believe that virtue, The good character, the excellent life, was not something you had. It was something you did. Continuously. Actively. Every single day. You were not born courageous. You became courageous by choosing courage repeatedly. You were not born disciplined. You became disciplined by choosing discipline when it was hard. You were not born the kind of person who never quits. You become that person by refusing to quit, one decision at a time. This is the most liberating thing I can tell you. Because it means your past doesn't determine your future. It means that even if you have quit before, even if you have a history of walking away from things, that history is not a prophecy. It is simply data about who you were. And who you are is who you decide to be, right now, in this moment. Right now, you can decide. I am someone who keeps going. Not in a wishful way. Not in a motivational poster way. In the Stoic way, as a declaration of identity that you will then act to honor. Every morning when you wake up, the decision is available to you again. Every time a challenge appears, the choice is in front of you. Every moment of doubt, every wave of exhaustion, every whisper that says stop, that moment is an opportunity to decide, again, who you are. Marcus Aurelius didn't just think these thoughts. He wrote them to himself every night, reinforcing the identity, recommitting to the standard, recalibrating to the purpose. That is what discipline looks like from the inside. Not the Instagram version. Not the highlight reel. The quiet, daily, deeply personal choice to be the person you decided to be. Chapter 9. When everything feels impossible. I want to speak now to the person who is really struggling. Not the person who is mildly discouraged. Not the person who is just having a hard week. The person who is genuinely, deeply, at the end of their rope. The person who has been trying for a long time and seeing nothing. The person whose faith is down to embers. The person who is reading this not for motivation but for permission. Some part of them hoping someone will say it's okay to stop. I'm not going to give you that permission. But I am going to say this. What you are feeling is real. The exhaustion is real. The pain is real. The doubt is real. Stoicism does not ask you to pretend otherwise. Stoicism does not ask you to manufacture false cheerfulness or pretend that difficulty is not difficult. Marcus Aurelius himself wrote about dark days. About waking up and not wanting to face the world. About the weight of continuing when everything felt heavy. He wrote about it precisely because he kept going anyway. And so I want to offer you, in this moment, not a command but an invitation. Don't think about finishing. Don't think about succeeding. Don't think about the goal. Think about the next step. Just the next step. Not the whole journey. Not the entire mountain. Not the finished version of the thing you're building. The next step. The Stoics called this amor fati, the love of fate. The embrace of what is, as it is. Not passive surrender, but active acceptance of the present moment as the only place where action is possible. You cannot act in the past. You cannot act in the future. You can only act here. In this step, take it, and then take the next one. That is all that has ever been asked of you. Chapter 10. The legacy of those who kept going. Here is what I want you to think about as we approach the end of today's conversation. Every legend, every person whose name history remembers, every person whose life changed the lives of others, every person who built something that outlasted them, made a choice at some point. A choice that nobody saw. A choice that nobody recorded. A choice that happened in private, in the dark, when nobody was watching and nobody would have known if they chose differently. They chose to keep going. And the reverberations of that choice, that single, quiet, unspectacular choice, are still being felt. The building stands because someone refused to stop when the foundation was hard. The book exists because someone refused to stop when the words wouldn't come. The company exists because someone refused to stop when the numbers were bad. The child was raised well because a parent refused to stop when parenting was exhausting. The world is full of invisible monuments to the decision to keep going. Your story is being written right now. Not by the difficulty you are facing. Not by the setbacks you have endured. Not by how far you think you are from where you want to be. Your story is being written by what you do next. And I genuinely believe, that the fact that you are here, that you have listened this far, that something in you is still seeking, still reaching, still trying to understand how to live better. That is not the behavior of someone who is going to quit. That is the behavior of someone who keeps going. The ancient Stoics left us something remarkable. They left us a philosophy built not for the easy times, but for the hard ones. Not for when life cooperates, but for when it refuses to. Not for the mornings you wake up energized and clear, but for the mornings you wake up empty and uncertain. They built a way of living that works precisely when everything else has stopped working. And the core of that philosophy, the beating heart of it, is this: you are capable of more than you think. Not because you are special. Not because you are different from everyone else who has struggled and doubted and wanted to quit. But because you have a choice. Every single moment. Every single day. And you can choose to keep going. If today's video gave you something, if something landed, if something shifted, if you felt something move in your chest, then do this for me. Subscribe to Stoicism Legends. Hit that button right now. Because every week we come back with more of this. More ancient wisdom made relevant. More practical philosophy for real life. More of the thinking that helps you become who you are capable of being. Share this with someone who needs it right now. You know someone who is struggling. You know someone who is close to giving up on something important. Send it to them, not with a message, just the video. Let the words do what words can do. And leave a comment below. Tell me, what are you not quitting on? What is the thing that you are committing, right now, to keep going with? Write it in the comments. Make it real. Let this community witness your commitment. Because that is what this channel is. A community of people who have decided to keep going. Welcome to that community. Stay in it. Keep going. We'll see you in the next one.